Spike.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the February 6th Town Council Work Session. I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:01, and I will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask for any public comment. If you're online joining us, you need public comment, please put it into the chat box. Anybody here, please state your name and address and limit it to 3 minutes. Wait to see if anybody online. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our first business item, which is the presentation of the current capital improvement plan, which will be Veronica.
Is it up?
Give her 1 second. She's getting everything ready to go.
Well, while we wait, I'm Veronica Atkinson, and I am the new Capital Projects Manager for North Beach. And this evening, I wanted to go over our FY25 projects to give a status of where we're at and review some of the ones that we have completed. Do you want to go in any particular order? Do you have any questions about any of the projects? I don't want to, or do you want me to go through them one by one?
Yeah, let's just run down the list.
Okay. Projects that are actually in progress right now. The first one is 9th Street Pump Station Upgrade. We're at the very end of this project, and we do have about $800 left encumbered to pay the contractor, and then we will be closing that project out. Our next project is Road, Street, Sidewalk. Thank you. Road, Street, Sidewalk construction. And we want to pave the senior parking lot with some of the money that's left over there. This isn't actually the time of the year to do that, but we're hopeful that we can get that done in the spring. The next item are the flower boxes on Bay Avenue. This project, we completed the ones that we could. This also would be a spring-summer project. We are now looking at some potential POS money for FY26 to help offset the costs for that for next fiscal year. The next project is Bayside Boys and Girls Club. We need to do some remaining repairs to their fence, and once that's completed, that project also will be closed out. Boardwalk Pier redecking. We've combined that project with the railing repairs, so we're going to have both those projects fall under this number currently. And that, again, we probably will need about $90,000 to finish some of the repairs that'll be needed in the spring, and we do have money for that. Our next is sewer manhole repairs. We have encumbered $21,225, and that's to do the lining of 5 of the manholes. And that should actually finish that project out as well. 7th Street Pump Station construction. We do have that project encumbered currently for $133,000. That contractor has since come back to us and is not interested in performing the work. That one Donnie Bowen could probably go into more detail about if you would like to know more about that project.
What happened with the backup? That project there, we had 7th Street slated to get a backflow type preventer valve put in the outfall that goes out in the bay to stop all the water that comes directly in that it's a 36-inch pipe that dumps right by the 7th Street finger pier. we came down, we had the contract, we awarded the contract to the contractor. We went out on site and went out 3 or 4 times with a wetsuit to try to get the tide low enough to see what we could do out there. When we went out in the bay and actually got to the end of that pipe, we had a tide that was low enough. That pipe out of the 36 inches is silted up where you only have about 6 inches of room left at the top of the very pipe. So to get that sand out the way and the type of check valve that the engineer recommend putting in there, I don't think it would hold up. You know, if it re-silted again, after we clean it out, we put the valve in there, it wouldn't operate correctly once it silted back in again. So instead of wasting that money, we just paid the contractor a little bit amount you see on here to do the site work, verify the size of the pipe. And we are prepared to cancel that, but we think they recommended, and which I also recommend, is to move forward with a pump station there and to seal that off completely like we did at 9th Street. Instead of wasting money, because the Tide Flex check valve was $40,000 itself just to buy the valve and not to install it. And I don't think we would get, you know, our money's worth out of that. So we're going to go in, you'll see later on, or this item will be turned into, actually, we'll come back to you with the 7th Street pump station that mirrors 9th Street. We're going to do the exact same thing. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Our next project are bike path repairs. Again, we pretty much expended, we have a little bit of money left and we have completed those repairs, but we have been offered to apply for program open space, POS money also. So we were looking to try to get some money to offset costs for that. And it will probably be more of a reoccurring FY26, might even go into FY27, because some of the repairs that were completed are showing some signs of erosion from the water and the storm. So we'll probably have to manage that project for a while. Our next project is Rip Wrap along Hatches Corner to 7th Street, protect existing boardwalk. This is another one that's more in Donnie's purview. It's a little more technical.
This project is the one that we've been talking about for the past couple meetings, and we do have a draft that's ready to go out, and it's for the 2 presentations that the council did here a couple, I think it was back in July council meeting. We had one from the Calvert Soil Conservation and one from Bayland. And it was kind of gave you 2 different looks at maybe ways that we could protect that boardwalk section from Hatches Corner, which we call Hatches Corner, which is North Beach, Public Beach, up to 7th Street. Those weren't apples to apples. We didn't feel comfortable with those presentations being comparable to each other. So we decided to do an RFP. And now we have that RFP in draft form and it's ready almost to hit the streets. But that is a whole RFP to ask for solutions to the erosion problem we've seen with the last couple bigger storms that have hit, the direct east storms that hit that area. It's not much protection in front of the boardwalk there. If you go further north, you have a lot of riprap, and that kind of protects with the Jersey wall a little bit better. But in that section where the homes are, where the boardwalk is, we've had 3 storms in the last 3 or 4 years that really wiped out the whole rail, did severe damage, and the sewer line that serves those houses are right under the boardwalk in that area. So we felt it better to put out a RFP to get some engineering designs to take care of that area and try to do both, try to protect the erosion, protect the shoreline, protect the homes, and also protect the utilities in that area.
Our next project is Chesapeake Avenue Station Number 2. This project will be split 50-50 with Calvert County. We haven't started this project yet, but this is one that will get started here in the next couple months. Donnie's balancing quite a few projects right now, so this one will require a lot of his attention. So he wants to get some of the more difficult projects he has open completed. Our next project is beach swimming area enhancements. That's another one that's more under Donnie's purview than mine.
Yeah, and the council, as you know, you've heard at the last council meeting, the presentation was actually given by Councilwoman Kabler. Bayland did show up at the end of that presentation, and then the council voted to move forward. Right now, we're in a holding period waiting for a meeting with MDE. We're going to meet on site, have them actually look at the options that were presented, and then see what's required permit-wise by MDE. Once we see what's actually required permit-wise, then we can move forward with RFPs, or we have looked at, the Calvert County has a marine contractor list that they bid out every year. And those contractors, that contract is supposed to be renewed at the end of February here. So we do have an option maybe to be able to piggyback off of Calvert County's licensed marine contractors from their contract that they already advertised and put out to bid. But the next step is right now, Bayland has contacted MDE. We're waiting for an on-site meeting to look at the projects that y'all were presented to see what permits are required.
Also, Donnie, if I could just chime in, they also reached out to DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers. So DNR may show up as well, Army Corps probably not. And I think Anna said that she would get back to us at the end of this week and let us know what's going on and what the status of that is. And then we'll have that on-site visit, as you said, Donnie, and then Bayland will move forward to obtain the necessary permits.
So I think I mentioned this once before, but I'm gonna throw it out again. And I mean, I think it's obvious I'm for the improvements. I voted for that, the things that we've already approved of, but when are we gonna start trying to plan for trying to save the beach? Right now, every time we get a storm, we're losing more and more of the beach. So this year is done because you won't get the permits in time to try to get something done to the beach. So I would highly recommend we find some funding and plan on next year or the end of this year submitting the permits so we can try to do something to try to save that beach, because if we get hit this fall, we're gonna lose even more of it.
I mean, I think, you know, that definitely is a concern, Greg, and what that is really gonna require before we get permits is trying to figure out what we want to do. And Donnie and I have talked to, Donnie, please feel free to chime in, but we've talked to Bayland and we've talked to other, you know, coastal engineers, and what we need to do in order to protect, especially the South Beach, is we're talking about kind of like a whole new infrastructure regarding the jetty. The jetty that's there doesn't really work. So there would have to be a whole new design and a new plan. And it would be, you know, would definitely take a significant amount of money, though I'm not saying that it's not something that's worthwhile. But, you know, we can't, you know, I know the town used to just pile sand up there and then it would just get taken away in the next storm. So I know that's not what you're suggesting, but I do think it's important, and I think it's something that, you know, maybe once we get through some of these big, you know, beach things that we're doing now, we can, you know, maybe pull together a little work group or a group of people and try to start thinking about, you know, what should we do? What needs to be done? And Donnie, I'm sure you have some ideas on this as well.
And Lauren, is this where the oyster reef comes into play?
Well, somewhat. I mean, the proposal that, you know, we're talking about now that you all have been presented, if you remember, the headland breakwaters would create a living shoreline. The idea is that a living shoreline would be created behind those breakwaters. The oyster reef, of course, you know, would dissipate the wave action. So not really so worried about the North Beach. It's really the South Beach that gets, you know, hammered in a southeast wind. Any sand that's been deposited there is taken away. And we have Donnie, what engineer did we talk to? It was before Bayland, but I think it was Crandall, maybe. Is that right?
It was the same contractor that did the wooden timber breakwaters, Disson
Right.
and June. It was an engineering firm that worked with Disson and June, who's a company out of Salisbury, and that's the company that did the wooden structure breakwater when the rock revetment sunk on the north side.
Right. So, I mean, it's a big, you know, it's kind of a big job, but if we're gonna do it, we should do it right. And if it's something that, you know, there's support to at least looking into it and scoping out maybe some of the options for, you know, implementing or taking the measures we need to take to protect the South Beach, we should start talking about it.
Well, in the
I
meantime.
agree with that.
In the meantime, I mean, obviously, like I said, I've been through this before and it does cost a lot of money. We built the breakwaters and we bought sand in, but
Right.
right now we got so much sand out there on the beach that it's actually coming over the boardwalk at times and it's already pretty much covered up the steps on both sides of the pier, the pavilion.
Mhm.
So maybe the first step might be just to get a permit to push some of the sand back out in the water. Because we've got way more sand now than we've ever had up on that beach.
I think we can move the
So
sand
I'm
around.
just
a lot,
throwing some ideas out there because again, it's not a cheap thing to get done, but pushing the sand back out is the least costly way to try to at least preserve some of the beach. Because if we don't do something, like I say, we get 1 or 2 storms this fall, we're pretty much done.
I mean, this
So
is gonna
that's
And
sound
something
Doc,
like
to say.
what I-
crazy, but getting a permit to put sand in a navigable water, even, you know, is really difficult to do. But
It's not
that
we've
sounds
done it
crazy
before.
because I know a storm can easily take that beach and put it back into the bay. But what we could do, Greg and Donnie, again, chime in or anyone, but maybe at least, you know, moving some of the sand around. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of sand covering the bench that's near the pirate ship and covering the stairs, and maybe we can move some of the sand around, you know, above the high tide line.
Councilman Doc, what I would recommend is now's the time for, we're looking at 26 budget. We could definitely, now we need to earmark a little bit of money in that budget to, and then also along with that, we do have the RFP going out for the offshore breakwaters, and I expect that to go out in the next couple of weeks. So the engineering firm that gets awarded that, or the design firm that awards that with the offshore breakwaters of the north section right up from the existing breakwaters of 7th Street, they may have some ideas how to save that sand or even help with the permitting of that. So when we award that to whatever firm we select, we might be able to tag on with them, and it might not be as costly if we have an on-site guy, engineer already designing that part, to just ask them, you know, since you're here, hey, what would it take or to get a permit to dredge this again or move this sand around, or recommendations to keep this sand on the beach or protect this beach?
Yeah.
Would be an option we could also look at possibly.
Yep.
Okay, but just
Like I
for the
said,
record,
we've
I just
done
want to
both.
say,
We've
like,
dredged and
I just don't think we should be dredging and put sand from the swim area and putting it up on the beach because that costs a lot of money. We've done this before.
that's not
many
what I'm
times.
saying.
Well,
That's
Donnie
not
just
what I-
said that. Donnie just mentioned it, so I just want to make sure no one agreed that was what we're looking at.
I think what I said is get a permit to push the sand back out
You
into
did.
the water.
You did, Greg,
Like I
but
said-
Donnie just mentioned dredging and putting the sand on the beach, so I just wanted to make sure that wasn't.
Again, over the past 30 years, we've done both.
Right.
And we've gotten from MDE and whatnot maintenance permits to do maintenance work. So that's more or less just the next step. We got to figure out what we want to do, put it in the long-term capital improvement plan that I know staff is going to bring in the next month or so to us. So just making sure that we put that in there and say, hey, right there, we want to do something, and then let it be figure out which way we want to go with it.
Perfect.
No, yeah, I agree. It's something we need to look at sooner rather than later. Depending on which way we ever want to go, whatever is the best and makes the most sense in all reasons, fiscal and in functionality and actually getting it executed.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Our next project is water system to add more shut-off valves to the system. Donnie has done a few. We have some remaining funds left, and he's going to look to see what additional valves that we can install to, for the end of the year. Our next project is, program Open Space Wetlands Overlook. We have the pergola And we have that out for bid. No, we've received the bids. So we're reviewing those right now. And we should be able to award that within the next week or so. So hopefully we will get that moving and close it up. Our next project is also program open space, Wetlands Overlook Park. And that one I'll need Donnie for.
Actually, Stacy could probably help us with this because she was key in getting these two. Phil worked on these more than I did, but over there, if you've been over to Wetlands Overlook Park, we had a pergola that was installed and we had two gazebos that were installed when the park was built, maybe back in 2012. Since that time, the pergola is getting in pretty bad shape, and the gazebos, when we were having, with the nature center being built there, we'd have the school trips come in and the gazebos were kind of small for the crowds that were coming for the trips and for the events that our naturalist was having there. So we get a grant, and what this grant is doing is putting two new structures, two new gazebos, a little larger, more rectangular, so they'll hold more kids when they come on the tours, and replacing the pergola that's was built, I mean, when the park was built back in 2012. So that's replacing two gazebos and the pergola at Wetlands Overlook Park. And we did get a grant to pay for that. And like I said, that was put out to bid. The bids have been received, and they should be awarded within the next week.
Mhm. Does that also include the 4-7? That grant, the next,
Yes,
the program open space 4-7?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Moving to the last two projects, the new one that was voted on 2 months ago is the pantry rebuild for Ladies of Charity. And that project is moving along. I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures on Facebook, but the contractor's really doing a great job and the ladies are so excited. We have submitted 2 reimbursements. We did receive one of those reimbursements about a week ago or within the week. And the second one has been submitted. So far, it seems our reimbursements coming back on that grant are working out very well. Our next project is Greenwood Avenue and Bay Parking Lot. Donnie, that one would
Yep.
be you.
And what this item is referring to is we received a grant for green infrastructure design. And when Mr. Licky was here working on grants, we applied for this. And what the grant entails is designing green infrastructure to help with the stormwater runoff. So the only really two areas we had in town, Greenwood Avenue, we own that section. It's an alleyway between 3rd and 5th Street there. Existing storm drain pipes are already in that location. And what this grant would be is to hire a design firm, come in and look at that area and see what we could do to slow the water down that's coming out of Calvert County, actually slow it down, treat it, maybe remove some of the pollutants, come up with some design to help us with all that water when it comes through, instead of just blasting down 5th Street and hitting there at Bay and 5th and flooding. This is to look at, ways, new innovative ways to maybe slow that down, treat it, and help with that. And also around the parking lot adjacent to the library, the town parking lot right by the library. What we had a preliminary discussion with was maybe coming up with some flower beds around that parking lot, putting in some really cool like underwater features, tanks and all to irrigate those flower beds with, because it's so close to the library. We'd like to make that a learning educational experience for kids. When they go to the library, they could come outside, they could do classes there on rain gardens, green infrastructure type items. So we'd wrap that parking lot that we have, next to the library there, come up with some cool way to come off 5th Street, the storage pipe, maybe fill those tanks, have a solar pump that would kick on and, irrigate those flower beds and show them how you can recycle water for that type of thing. And the grant's for design only, and I think it's 100,000. So we'll have to draft an RFP, put that out to bid, and hopefully we get some cool, innovative, new type designs for stormwater treatment there.
So it will also be stormwater management, those flower beds as well, for like flooding on that area.
Would it also be stormwater management to help with the flooding in that area?
Yes, that would be.
Okay, I like it.
Hey, that sounds great to me too, Donnie. You mentioned the RFPs. Are there any drafts? Have you guys started to draft those yet, or what's the status of that? And then this is grant money. What's our due date to have that obligated or
We had one
Encumbered.
meeting with DNR already, and we are working on a draft for a grant. I have some information, and the grant actually spells out a lot of information in the grant itself. We could use that for the scope of work part of the grant. So
Oh, that's
I
great.
developed like scope of work, and I'm working with Amanda. She was trying to get out the offshore breakwater one, with that's out now. So this is the next on the list, grant wise. I mean, RFP wise, I'm sorry. But that's the next important one that we're gonna work on, because we do have a deadline is, September of 25
Okay.
to have it out. And we expect to have that out, say by the end of March, probably.
And that would be two RFPs, right? One for Greenwood and one for the parking lot?
It would probably be this one RFP for both.
One, okay. All right, sounds good.
So that finishes our open projects. My next slide focuses in on the closed projects. I know that's what we stand on one leg. Yeah. There you go. Got it. Yep. Thank you. So a lot of these projects you've seen before, they've been in the CIP for a while. We went through, Donnie and I, and went through and looked at these projects to figure out what was closed, what we've completed. And would you like me to read through the list of the closed projects as well?
Yeah.
Okay. The library, as you know, it's closed. That was completed. The camera project was for street cameras and security cameras. We've closed that. The grant consultant, we are no longer utilizing an outside consultant, and we have moved that money over into our operating budget. River rock replacement throughout the town. That has been done. It was completed. We're going to need future work with that. So that will be an ongoing project that we will see throughout the next few years as well. Town Hall, that project has been completed as well, and we've closed it. We have engineer special projects. We've closed that project because that project was also in the operating budget. So there was also a line in operating for an engineer. So I've moved that money over to the operating. Boardwalk railing repairs and replacement. We took this project and we merged it with the boardwalk decking replacement. So we're just going to call that the boardwalk repairs. Sewer wastewater treatment plant reserve. This one would be Donnie.
This was
Oh, I know this.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I do know this one.
Yeah.
Still learning, still on my learning curve. This $133,556. This money is actually paid each month on our bill. So I think it was like $34 or 300, something like that. We put out each month. So it's on the operating side and it's actually in the sewer budget. Mini crawler cameras, we've closed that. Donnie bought that crawler camera, so that's good. Our next one is Sewer Bay Avenue wet well rebuild. This project has also been completed. Sewer study to evaluate infiltration and needed repairs. This was a TBD as well, but the project had been completed in prior years. convert to lighting or converted lighting in the park and install automatic fill valves for the koi pond. And that also has been completed. So that completes my presentation. I will note that we will be coming back and presenting the FY26 operating budget next month. We'll go through that. And then after that, so it's March, April, we're looking to come back with the CIP for a 5-year projection. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's a nice-
Thank you, Veronica.
Thanks.
Next, we're going to move into parking improvements. All right, let's see if I have control. I do not. Oh, I do now. Maybe. I do not. All right. All right. So we know parking, it's a problem. This is sort of the first, I'm going to run through all these and then sort of circle back at the end for a quick discussion and then a plan for what I would like us to at least have answers for internally for next week to be able to give staff direction. So we know that we have increasing volume in the peak seasons, especially around in the commercial areas. We also have challenges throughout the whole town. And we know that no one solution is going to fix everything, so we need to sort of look at solutions in areas and then fit the picture. Next slide. All right, so we've gone with our peak season. Mainly we have high volumes in our mixed use areas, especially around the waterfront area, including the boardwalk. Again, more people, more chances to go fast. Always fun. Also a lot more pedestrians and whatnot in crosswalks and moving about. And then we have our large events that will happen down there as well, causing a different type of parking problem. Then we go to the out of season ones, and we have the restaurants, which are still busy and carry ourselves through the winter, which is amazing. But they bring people to town, which has a parking caveat as well. And then the local speeders, who we all know, yeah, we live here, we go fast. All right, so next we'll go to some potential immediate solutions that we can enact. We can go through with the signage, replace, install new signs for visibility and getting everything sort of cohesive on the one page instead of a multitude of different signs we have. We can go through and do striping for curbs and parking lines, which we have done before and seen that it is effective. We can look at shoulder enhancements. Specifically, in the past, we've talked about 8th and 9th Street, doing that to try and optimize and gain some parking spots. Do an education outreach plan. And then we also are possibly looking at installing some speed signs. And you've probably seen them at MML. They're the ones that flash when you crest them. And hopefully there may be some opportunities for grants for those. And then also see if we can get an increased enforcement, hopefully via the police, but also knowing that if we wanted more than that, it may be a budget line for a code. All right. Also with the enforcement, if we know there are problem intersections, seeing if we can have targeted enforcement on crosswalks, like they do in Annapolis sometimes, and you literally get hit by a cop walking across and it's like, pull over. All right, then we go to the long-term solutions. Possibility of looking at one-way streets, that gets an engineering firm involved. The council would need to review and provide direction to the staff on where we want to focus those thought lines on. Parking stickers, which was a process we had in the past. It's, do we want to bring it back? What that looks like, both in implementation and timing and any rules it may have involved to it. Parking meters, which have also been discussed in previous terms. if that is something we want to look into and move forward to, and any type of system or caveats that could have. For example, if you had parking stickers, you don't need to pay the meter because you're a North Beach resident, you don't need to feed the meter where you're parked at. But the meters would be a revenue source which could offset enforcement. And then parking requirements for businesses. Does council desire to have the staff and us look at parking needs within zoning? This is also coming up from the planning commission in their meetings. They need direction for, at one point in time, we removed the parking table, which we had in code, which said this type of business needs this many spots. They're running into problems now with infill development and whatnot, and even residential development, where parking is becoming more of a problem from developments and buildings that are coming in to play. So it may be us looking at, do we want to make sure they get a parking table back in place, and what does that look like? So to circle back, before that, for next week, I think it would be good if we could come together and digest this and then come together with what do we want the staff to move on in the immediate solutions, or if we want to bump up a long-term forward to move it forward in an immediate solution. I know in the past, we talked about 3rd Street as being a area we want to look at, but we also know that played into a possible one-way. And we talked about 8th and 9th Streets. So I know it's like if we want to move forward with it, come back and say, what areas do we want to move forward with?
I think we need to look at those draft. well,
The
a few
one-way
months
drafts?
ago, we had.
Yeah, we
the
had some
streets.
rough
I think we need to
drafts.
look at that before
Okay.
we start.
Yeah,
That was a pretty good guide, and I
correct.
thought we had already discussed some of the things we would like to do.
And that's just it. So I know we have those
Backtrack on
drafts.
that first.
Yep. So then we do want to next week have 3rd, 8th, and 9th, which we had the drafts of
We do.
to look at.
Well, I do have a question about 8th and 9th, especially because there was mention of a curb and gutter that would need to be put in to gain the 10 to 12 spaces that you would gain on each of those streets. What is the cost of doing the curb and gutter? Is it worth the curb and gutter to get the 10 spaces? I'm just trying to figure out the cost of doing something like that, especially on 8th and 9th, because you only have a sidewalk and curb on one side of the street. The other side does not. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think Donnie has an answer to that.
Yeah, Councilwoman Healy, we looked at a while back, and of course, prices might have gone up a little bit, but we did look at the curb and gutter concrete to go on the south side of 9th Street and 8th Street to delineate more where the right-of-way is, and then that way we could stripe that and add more cars. In that area, the residents on 8th Street especially have kind of crept over and took the town's right-of-way a little bit there. And that was $26 a linear foot. And those streets are 350 feet long, so you got a calculator. But that was the curb and gutter. And then you would have to put down some CR6. We estimate that to be like $5,000 for each street. So that would be $10,000 in gravel before we pave. And the paving, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head because it's probably a year ago that we did this. To pave those two shoulders came in around $35,000 for 8th and 9th Street, just to go from Bay Avenue to Chesapeake Avenue.
Rough math, that's about 30,000 a street by the time you add all those
Okay.
things in. To gain those, and then that also helps improve our stormwater flow down there as well, to get it directed towards storm drains.
Yes, and that's why we recommended curb and gutter, because without putting the curb and gutter on those two streets, just paving it, you still would, have a lot of issues there. You couldn't really lay it out properly. So if we put concrete curb and gutter, not necessarily sidewalk, but just the curb and gutter, then we could pave up to the curb, then we could stripe it, and we could get the max spaces in that area.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to double check on that. I do think the diagonal parking and then the parallel parking, I do think it's a good idea. I mean, we essentially, I'm trying to think if I remember correctly, we ended up it was basically like 10 extra spaces on each street. But that wasn't counting maybe giving residents their permanent parking that live on some of those commercial streets like, Third Street, say.
So if I could, we could for next week, when we bring this back for discussion, do a rough estimate for those costs and get an idea of where we could drop that into the CIP. There may be enough funding this year to consider that now. I don't know. But certainly we can bring it in for discussion and see if we can't fine tune that. So when we come back with some decision requests for next week, I'll have those numbers ready for you.
Well, and especially 8th Street, you are right, Donnie, because, some of those properties have kind of creeped out into the road.
But also, and bringing this back too, it's like if we look at those long terms, some of them, it's like, do we entertain them? It's like, yes, then that means we can go back and work more on fleshing that out, or if that idea just needs to be tabled. So again, like I in my head, I can throw out like a 15, 20-year plan on a lot of these things, but I'm just one voice, one vote up here. And some things I know will not make everybody happy, but that's the balance. Try and get the most people you can as often as you can. So,
Well, we definitely need to get something moving here, so I think we need to work both immediate and long-term
Yeah.
simultaneously. And look, the signage thing, some of you have heard me say this before, but if we don't have any enforcement, we're just wasting money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we gotta get some enforcement. And that goes whether we do new signage or not. I mean, you can't have a solid parking plan and an effective parking plan if you don't have enforcement. So
Correct.
we need to address that as well on how we're gonna actually get that enforced, either by code enforcement, writing checks, or the deputies writing tickets. So we definitely need to focus on that piece as well. That don't mean paying them more money with their new contract either.
yeah, like there are some things that fall under the police, like the car is parked the wrong way on the side of the road. Like you're facing traffic,
Yeah, a
the
lot
with
of that, but
traffic.
I won't go into that.
But that's one of the things where like that's more of a police ticket versus a code ticket.
True.
A code ticket is, hey, you can't park here and you're parking here. So. Yes, and that's something too, where if we look at it, like if we do the new signs, it's the question of what do we really want type of signs? Like what does that look like? And that may be a different discussion. And we have, what, 15, 30 2-hour parking zones, Rick? Roughly, yeah, like we have a mixture of signs, and it may be maybe simplifying it down to 15 and 2, and then knowing what that means. And that ties into that long-term thing of, do we want to do parking meters? Because that then it's a way to enforce, but that has other things tied to it. So again, honestly, I truly expect some decisions next week, and then honestly, another work session to talk more about it if we need direction on which way we want to go, and for all of us to get our heads together and plan it out, knowing that this may be more than our term.
Oh,
In long run.
absolutely.
Like truly, like we start it now, but have a plan going out and it rolls the next term to keep going.
Yep.
So,
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll bring this back next week and we'll see if we can assign some sort of budget to some of these action items. I don't know how successful we'll be, but we will do our best to get just an idea of how much the costs are and then break it out for discussion point on each item for you. Okay.
all right, any other question with the parking? Okay. Then in that case, we've gone through everything we have on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Meeting adjourned at 7:45.
thank you, Mickey.
Thank you, Mary.